Hello my friends, welcome back to This Week in Social Media. We share a few more updates on the MrBeast games. We also share an update on YouTube Shorts. We share some more updates on the TikTok ban not being supported by the US public. We share some data that the US public still use social media as their source for news. We share the fact that some Russian linked influencers got banned on TikTok and Meta. And we end the show on a lighter note talking about TikTok's addition to the subscriber feed and adding an ability for people to make more money on the platform. In last week's show, we covered the first half of an interview that Atozy had posted on the 27th of September, which in the second half that we found out the interviewee claimed that some people were pushed over others to get a briefcase as part of the second challenge. A percentage of those briefcases were safe and the rest weren't, e.g. those people would get eliminated. And for those people who were pushed or hurt, they were removed between Las Vegas, the MrBeast part of the Amazon production, and Canada, where Amazon then took the reins for the Amazon Prime episodes of the Beast games that, by the sound of it, has finished filming at the time of recording, and quote, anyone who was physical or mean. We also found some details about what the third challenge really took place of, or really happened in Las Vegas. So the third challenge was a capture the flag style game. Many of those who were playing in the third challenge would fight over flags, grabbing each other. Hans interviewee claimed that some people were carried out by medics for, quote, hurting themselves or knocking themselves out due to tripping, falling when running for flags. So they would be running to potentially get this flag from someone else. There was also some talk, if I recall correctly, that there was people fighting over the flags. How MrBeast had kind of articulated it was they were meant to do rock, paper, scissors to decide who would actually win that flag, but what ended up happening was you basically had the kind of, it was more to related to these reports where these bulkier guys were basically pulling and kind of snatching the flags off other competitors and kind of being a bit more forceful with how they went about things. After the third challenge, each flag had a number on it, and those people were split into odd and even numbers, and then they were split and gave them food. Now, the interviewee claimed that the production fucked up by giving all of the really, really nice food that was meant to be there for the end of Las Vegas, the end of the overall challenge, to what I believe was the even numbers. And then when the interviewee went back after the food break, there was a kind of conversation around what did you get, how did it happen, is that unfair, and etc. And then it seemed and came to light that the production in theory had fucked up. If you want to hear more about the fourth challenge, it doesn't really add or go into the details of the lawsuit, hence why I'm not really covering it here. So I will leave, as I said before, leaving the links down below if you want to go check out that interview and find out more information for yourself, along with all the other source notes for this week's video. This was also around the time where it was bad luck because of the airline outage that took place across America in July as well, because of technical issues that was mostly reported across the time, and I'll leave some resources down below if you want to find out some more information about that. So it created a bit more difficulty getting everyone home, but you could say, or you can't really claim that that was MrBeast's team or their production's fault specifically, because they didn't, correlate, or they didn't be in a position where they were causing that internet or hacking outage, if I recall correctly. There was one report that was also talked about within the interview where a female TikToker wanted to, quote, end herself, end quote, because of what she went through. She got to the first challenge and now she was allegedly homeless because of MrBeast, and MrBeast should give her more money, etc. It's hard to verify that. The interviewer and Atozy and also the interviewee didn't really specify that, because obviously that's not his story and it wasn't necessarily, so it could be linked to the lawsuit, might not. We're not 100% sure what happened there because we don't have the details, but I thought it was important still to bring to the show and still say that, it happened. And if I can find more information about that TikToker, I will be sharing it in next week's show. Within this interview, also the interviewee claimed that they were treated like an animal by someone on the production staff. Now maybe that person was just having a bad day, and that was one person out of many who were on the production who worked well on set. And when pushed to give more context and examples, the interviewee wasn't able to recall it. So this could just be a bad experience, or etc., or there wasn't 100%, or maybe it was just the wrong end of the stick, or maybe you need to also keep in mind as well that when this happened, it was to do, they were probably sleep deprived, they were probably slightly malnourished, especially if the lawsuit is to be believed, etc. So they were also, of course, in a level of high or medium to high stress situation because of the challenges and the sleep and the stuff we talked about in last episode as well. The interviewee also claimed on the Amazon Prime side of the production there was no more physical challenges, and at the end of the interview goes through the lawsuit claims line by line, and was willing to add that everyone got paid everyone got paid $2,000, and then it came out after it happened they were then asked to come back for everyone else to get an additional $1,000, but as far as he was aware, no one was asked to necessarily pay a "you're not allowed to sue us"-esque line. So the total pay for, in theory, those 3 weeks would have been $3,000. That's good or bad depending on how you look at it, but that's allegedly because this is around the lawsuit claiming that they weren't paid enough in compensation for what they were partaking, and would they be able, and we still don't really know whether the California law is going to hold in respect to would they be counted as independent contractors, or would they be counted as independent employees of Mr. Beast's production company as contestants. So this is really going to be where it falls into that kind of grey area. But to be honest, from what it's sounding like and what it's looking like, as the lawsuit since writing this episode has kind of gone quiet. Now that could be the legal process being quite slow, but also, as I alluded to in last episode, it's very likely that this lawsuit won't go anywhere necessarily. It will probably be talked about when it was brought up and happened, and if there is anything that happens, it will most likely be settled outside of court through NDAs, so etc. Now that doesn't mean stuff's not going to get leaked, as we've seen. Everyone who has come out about this situation has already in theory are under NDAs anyway. So does that mean that people are going to come out? Maybe not. Time will have to see, we'll have to tell, and we'll have to go from there. There was also some claims that no one who actually played in the games likes one of the female creators who was actually posting out a lot of this, or quote leaking this, and there was talk that she was a clout chaser, with him also claiming if he or any of the other 2,000 people were asked to go back for Series 2, it's very likely that they would as well. Now, in Tozie's ending card, or the video that he did with the interviewee, he added a bit on the end talking about a CNN article where most of the claims we've already talked about were confirmed, and a bit more data was talked about. But there was also some claims where allegedly one of the portaloos that was being used did overflow, and some of the staff had to clean that up, that either A, didn't have the experience, didn't have the right equipment, but also, number 3, it was also allegedly around where some of the contestants were having to sleep. So that would be obviously nasty, obviously horrible, and shouldn't have happened. Now, the question is that specifically who's liable there? Where's the problems there? Is that just a planning logistics issue, as we discussed in last episode? Or is it more actually these things happened and the right procedures weren't in there, and then where does it sit legally, right? Where does it sit from a liability point of view? Again, unfortunately, probably something we're not going to know, because if it is covered in this lawsuit, it will likely be an open case. People will be paid off, sign NDAs, get the money, bye-bye, thank you very much. But Mr. Beast did go on the Impulse podcast, Logan Paul's podcast, to talk about Lunchley, and there's a couple of notable quotes I think that would be important, and it would be the good PR side of this story, you could say. That quote, when Jimmy was talking about the fact they broke so many world records, as well as him building a city for hundreds of people and spending $100 million on building sets, etc., he also claimed that he gave up to $20 million within the show. There was a conversation as well about how much budget he was really given, and the headline, I believe it was the New York Times that broke it, said that he got 100 million for his cut within the Amazon deal. But there was allude to the fact that the budget could have been significantly larger for the show. We'll see whether that is true or not, and potentially we will see those financials. It depends on whether they get disclosed and if the lawsuit does end up falling through, because if it does, then there will have to be a level of public conversation around it in regards to the discovery process, but which in theory could have the full numbers for the production within it. However, Mr. Beast did claim that he, quote, lost money on it as well. So I'll leave the links down below if you do want to check out that podcast and hear it for yourself. But also, there was no comments on the fact that the lawsuit was happening. There was no comments on the, issues potentially that happened. It sounded to me like it was a promotional piece for Lunchable, and then a quote-unquote catch-up boys chat, so to speak. Hello, my friends. Did you know that 99.1% of you do not subscribe? So could we please change that? And if we do, my promise to you is I will continue to share my views, my opinions, the opportunities I see on social media, those things that could explode and really, really help your business with the news going on in social media. So thank you ever so much for joining me, and back to the topic episode. Very, very quick update on YouTube Shorts news we heard this week that come the 15th of October. YouTube Shorts will now be able to be uploaded at 3 minutes longer. Now, on the video in question, they did say that the videos need to still kind of adhere to normal copyright rules. They will still go into the partner program, so those who are short form creators looking for your 10 million views to be able to get monetized on your shorts channel, that will still count. But also things to consider is about the copyright specifically, but also anything 3 minutes over in that portrait format uploaded before October the 15th will not count into the shorts algorithm. So it is only from October 15th onwards where 3 minute plus shorts will take place. But for me, I feel this is a really, really good win, because I think expanding it will give creators more options to create those short form videos. And I know me personally, I've been having to cut my slightly longer short form videos down, because normally I do a 90-second piece, and with this change I'll be able to just leverage the fact that I've got 90-second shorts and I use those on the shorts platform rather than having to cut them down to 1 minute specifically. So that's an update on YouTube Shorts. We also saw some more data come through, which is very, very similar as what we covered in last week's show about the TikTok ban, where, quote, this week we heard that more data was shared about more Americans losing support for the TikTok ban, with a new infographic showing that 18% of overall American adults are losing support for the ban between March 23 and July and August 24. With it being likely, if Donald Trump wins, he vows to, quote, save TikTok, end quote, if he does win the US election at the time of recording in about 6 weeks' time, 5 weeks' time, somewhere around there. As we covered in last week's show, it does sound as if the fact that the US government needs to release more information on the actual threat that is posed by the app on how it impacts US users specifically, because this is the conversation we had when we saw the transcript come out, because it was a lot of stuff was retracted for, quote, national security. Now, some would say that's a legitimate reason. Others would say that the only reason why someone does that, the only reason why that happens, is because they want to hide something, right? And there was some comments on that video talking about the fact that allegedly, right, some money changed hands and those kind of things. I'll let you think what you want, but for me, I think if you're going to make a legal argument to say, well, actually you're selling Chinese data or etc., then you have to prove it, and you have to prove it in a legal argument, and that's why TikTok is fighting it. That's why it looks like that a lot of US consumers, a lot of US voters are going, hold on, why are you going after TikTok? Because allegedly it hasn't actually done what you're claiming, and if it has done what you're claiming, they need to prove it. On the 17th of September, Social Media Today reported that we heard from a new peer review study, and the peer review study found that, quote, that social media continues to play a critical role in news consumption, with 54% of US adults including it as part of their news input on social apps. The report in question shared that social media can be used and quote, the Social Media Today article I found to be quite skeptical or quite pushing against social media being used in this way. Quote, fraudulently with misinformation, conspiracy theories, etc. Fake reports reportedly go viral on social media apps, amplifying as a result of confirmation bias or via manipulative programs. And as such, it's hard to know what's true and what's made up on social media feeds. Personally, end quote. Personally, I feel that it's do you get all of your news in one place? Should you get all of your news in one place? And if you shouldn't, due to the comments on social media today, or in general, should you read around? Should you look around? Should you look on social media and then try and validate that information either through a third party or going directly to source or looking at multiple sources? And for me personally, I think it's going to be better and more important for someone who's educated and wanting to think and wanting to critically think about a situation and is able to be intelligent enough to question what they're seeing and being more openly skeptical. I think it's more important for us to have a different perspective, and that's maybe why we're seeing a rise in people using social media, because we are in a world where people are consuming and thinking that they can trust mainstream media less because of biasy, because of the quote-unquote misinformation that's going on. And I think for me, that's also personally, I found it interesting because that's been some of the comments I've been hearing as well. People have really been enjoying a more independent source. Now, yes, I share my opinions, fine, but I think, and I would hope that you guys who are listening and consuming this show, thank you very much, by the way, but I would hope that you guys would be able to be in a position where you can fact check and you're not going to necessarily 100% take my word for what I'm saying. Yes, of course, this show's researched and all my sources are always linked down below in the video, but actually you should consider, what if I get it wrong? What if I make a general mistake? Now, yes, I have a level of responsibility in the reporting that I do, sure, but especially when it comes to opinion-based stuff, you should try to consume stuff on the back end. You should try and consume stuff you may not necessarily agree with, because it will allow you to become better, it will allow you to become more educated, and it will mean that you're less likely to lean into confirmation bias. You'll be more skeptical when you see that thing on social media and you go, okay, well, is that right? Maybe you'll wait for a community note to be added to it before taking it as gospel. Maybe you'll be waiting to see and confirm that things happened by seeing it from multiple sources, some of which can be independent, some of which can be mainstream. At the end of the day, I think we need to treat people as adults, right? And they can fact check for themselves, right? And I think it's their responsibility, and I guess it comes back to this question of, whose responsibility is it to make sure that the conversation or the facts are correct? Is it yours? Is it mine? Is it mainstream media's? Is it the platforms? And to be honest, I think we all need to do better. I think we all as a community need to do better at making sure that what we're articulating personally, the things we can control in ourselves, are correct and are right and are able to be validated from that perspective, right? And if you are slightly skeptical, make clear that that's what you are when you report it, right? Because I think that's important, because then people can be aware, okay, clearly there's some evidence here because we can see it, but actually this might be fabricated, this might be wrong. There was also some interesting points from this peer-reviewed study or peer-research study that showed that the study found that Facebook and YouTube outpaced all other social media sites, quote, Facebook and YouTube outpaced all other social media sites as places where Americans regularly get their news. About a third of US adults say that they regularly get their news from each of these two sites. Quote, a smaller percentage of Americans regularly get their news from Instagram, brackets 20%, close brackets, TikTok, 17%, or X, formerly known as Twitter, 12%, or even fewer got their news from several sites, including Reddit with 8%, Nextdoor being 5%, Snapchat being 5%, WhatsApp being 5%, LinkedIn being 4%, and Truth Social being 3%, and Rumble being 2%. Interesting part of this study as well is the fact that about half of TikTok users, 52%, say that they regularly get the news from the site. This is up from 43% in 2023 and also up again from 22% in 2020 specifically, right? So we're clearly seeing a rise in TikTok being used as a news source. We're clearly seeing a rise and leaning more data into this concept around independent journalism, people creating content and putting it out on these platforms to be consumed and being a different voice than the mainstream, right? And people not necessarily trusting the mainstream in the same way. Should you look at mainstream? Sure, if you wish to, but also you should validate it, or you should be as skeptical, as I said earlier in the show. You should be as skeptical as you can when it comes to what's going on. But that is going to end this story. What do you think down below? Who's responsible? Is it down to you as a consumer to fact check this content? Is it down to me as a producer of news content to fact check to an extent? Do you feel that it's mainstream is the issue? Do you feel that, we need to, how do we deal with this misinformation problem? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. Hello my friends, I hope you're enjoying this episode. I would like to send you my top 10 tips on how to do video marketing and things to be aware of in video marketing. So if you would like that, then make sure to head over to the website and find this silver box and make sure to fill in your information. I'll be sure to send it directly to you. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me, and I look forward to sharing more content with you very, very soon. We found out this week that TikTok and Meta have banned some state Russian media accounts from the apps. Quote, earlier this month, Meta announced that it had banned RT and a handful of other Russian state media networks from the platform after the discovery of a scheme to use, quote, right-wing conservatives in the US to amplify political discourse, right? So this was the conversation around and I remember listening to a podcast, if I can find it, I'll leave it in the description down below, talking about this, where Russia looked and wanted to basically destabilize the concept of the current US election, to basically make you and ask you to question a lot of what every candidate is saying, a lot of etc., which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but for the average person who maybe wouldn't go into detail on fact checking these things, I think it's important for us to be aware of it, and that's why I think Meta has gone and ban these accounts in the same way we'll go on to later as well, that TikTok has followed suit. But it did sound like Meta was actually moving away from political content as a whole because they've had issues with it in the past. This is a clear move, in my opinion, from Meta and TikTok to make sure that this year's US election is as fair as possible. Again, we had a very similar statement that I'll put on screen talking about TikTok's reasoning from behind banning the same accounts, and it seems to follow a very similar line to Meta specifically. TikTok says that those accounts have already been restricted in the EU and the UK as it's uneligible on the For You page, as it's under state affiliation media policy. It sounds like Meta is moving away from the policy, as I said before. Quote, TikTok also published the latest. They removed 5 networks and 7,792 accounts in August alone, and it has been linked to multiple other manipulation activities as well. Some reports have questioned if Meta will go as far as fully blocking the Russian TV station fully on the platform, because there is some splinter and parts of the RT media entity still kind of existing, but it has been very suppressed as well on Facebook, rather than going after, quote, some of the tools, end quote, for Russians' alleged misinformation tools. But that is going to wrap up this story. So do you think that Meta or TikTok have made the right decision by going after these accounts and at a minimum suppressing them, and definitely banning some of those influencers who were potentially or had already been used by Russia's alleged misinformation campaign to twiddle, to potentially mess around with the US election? Do you think that they've made the right call by doing this, or do you think that actually it's down to the voter to educate themselves better? Do let me know in the comment section down below. And to end the show, this week we heard of some new news about TikTok expanding the subscribe option for creators on the platform. TikTok launched the subscription model for creators back in 2022, but earlier this year, as US Senate Summit announced, it would also be expanding it to non-live creators. So back in 2022, the subscription service was mostly used or only able to be used to actually get creators paid if you were using the live features on TikTok. This kind of aligned with their push for TikTok Shop as well. As per TikTok's statement, subscriptions allow creators to offer their most engaged followers with special access to specific perks, unique experiences, and membership-only communities for a monthly fee, building a stronger, authentic connection that has already been made established through their content. Creators can also use this feature to provide spaces for their relationships and encourage more meaningful engagement. Eligible creators will be able to customize their subscription package into 3 different pricing tiers with specific select benefits aligned with their approach. Creators will be able to offer private community channels, explicit or different content, so exclusive content to those subscribers, community kind of badges or community stickers specifically that can be used in lives and also in the comment section, and also other custom perks ready for the perks on TikTok as a perform, request, Distok role, shout outs, live topics, etc. And I'll leave some more details specifically, but there has been some talk that it's kind of only for the big guys on TikTok. Specifically, eligible creators must be 18 or older and have account in good standing and have at least 10,000 followers and 100,000 video views in the last calendar month. Is this really an option, or is this really something which TikTok is trying to expand? Because wouldn't it be beneficial to potentially bring that threshold down to create more people to be motivated to create short form content? Because allegedly there's been some more reports that TikTok and short form specifically is a lot harder to create and a lot harder to monetize, right? We're seeing this in a world where there's a shift towards longer form content. I think for me personally, short form is incredibly valuable if you're looking to grow and get exponential views and bring people traffic wise, or potentially do something more unique that suits that short form content. But I don't think it should replace a long form strategy when it comes to videos. And I think that you can be in a world where if you're focusing on short form, if it doesn't pay enough and doesn't become creatable enough in regards to revenue, why would someone invest their time, energy and resources to it unless they're specifically being A, rewarded by TikTok, for example, or B, it's a very good funnel for their business, a very good funnel for attention for then their long form content. But actually we're seeing reports, and I watched a podcast this morning that talked about the jump between people watching short form and then those same people creating, coming over, watching long form. Yes, there's going to be a percentage, but is the percentage very high? We're not 100% sure. We don't really know the data. What it sounds like is there's not a huge amount. I'd be interested in hearing your view as someone who's consuming YouTube, of course. Do you specifically consume short form only? Do you just consume long form only? Would you, if you found someone through, say, short form, would you then jump to their long form content? Or are you specifically just going to consume their short form content? I would love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. That is going to end the show, so thank you ever so much for joining me once again. If you did enjoy this show and you would like to be notified when we post another show, when a new show comes out, then make sure to be subscribed to the channel. Thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me, and I'll see you very, very soon.